Many of us grew up believing one thing: potatoes spike blood sugar like crazy. And if we're being honest, that belief usually comes from experience. That sudden wave of sleepiness after lunch, the hunger that sneaks back an hour later, or the blurry "oh no" moment on the glucose monitor. But here's where we often get it wrong. The real issue isn't the potato itself, it's what happens to its starch when we treat it the usual way. And there's something surprisingly simple, almost too simple, that research suggests can drop its glucemic impact by around 35%. So no, we don't have to avoid potatoes forever, we just have to understand what's happening inside them. People in their 40s, 50s, and beyond often swear off potatoes completely because they're scared of glucose spikes. It makes sense. Potatoes digest quickly, and quick digestion means quick glucose release. But here's the part most people never hear about. Potatoes are actually rich in nutrients that support healthier aging. Potassium for blood pressure, prebiotic fiber for the gut, and surprisingly strong satiety when prepared correctly. The problem isn't that potatoes are bad. It's that their starch changes dramatically depending on how we cook, cool, or reheat them. That starch can behave like fast sugar, or it can transform into something slower, gentler, and more blood sugar friendly. Before we get excited about the cooling method, we need to clear up two persistent myths. These misunderstandings make potatoes look worse than they actually are, and once we correct them, the whole picture suddenly makes sense. Myth number 1. All potatoes are bad for blood sugar. Not quite. Potatoes behave differently depending on variety, ripeness, preparation method, and even serving temperature. A large, fluffy russet baked fresh out of the oven will hit you differently than small, waxy potatoes in a chilled salad. Studies showed the glycemic index of potatoes can shift by 20 to 40 points simply by changing how they're cooked and cooled. That's like going from a high-impact carb to a moderate one without changing the food itself. Myth number 2. Cooling potatoes ruins the taste. This one stops a lot of people from even trying the method. But here's the surprising truth. You don't have to eat potatoes cold. Cooling is just the step that creates resistant starch. Once that resistant starch forms, you can enjoy the potatoes chilled or warm them up again gently. The beneficial starch stays. This means potato salads, roasted potatoes reheated the next day, or even cooled then pan-warmed wedges can all be blood sugar-friendlier versions of the same comforting food. You can still enjoy the taste you love without the spike you dread. Let's walk through the actual technique that gives potatoes a far gentler glycemic impact without removing them from our lives. We'll break this method into 4 simple steps. Each one plays a role in reshaping the starch structure, boosting resistant starch, and helping our blood sugar stay steadier. Think of this as learning how to coach the potato rather than banning it. Step 1. Cook, where the starch first begins to shift. We start with cooking because heat is what opens the starch granules inside a potato. When potatoes are raw, those granules are tightly packed. Once the potato is exposed to high heat, whether boiling, steaming, or baking, those starches soften and expand. That expansion is necessary because it creates the space that later allows the cooling phase to work its magic. For practicality, boiling or steaming are the most reliable options if your goal is glycemic stability. These methods hydrate the starch evenly and create a uniform texture, which later helps resistant starch form more consistently during cooling. Baking can work too, but it usually results in drier, fluffier interiors, which are delicious, but tend to reheat differently. A helpful trick here is to cook your potatoes just until tender, not falling apart. Overcooking can break down cell structure and make the potato more likely to spike blood sugar later due to faster digestion. You can use any variety, yellow, red, white, or russet, but waxy potatoes, like red or baby potatoes, hold their shape better for the cooling method. Starchy potatoes still work, they just become softer after cooling. So step 1 is simple. Cook the potatoes thoroughly and let heat do the first half of the transformation. Step 2. Cool. This is where the real glycemic shift happens. When a cooked potato cools, the starch molecules go through a process called retrogradation. During retrogradation, some of the digestible starch reorganizes into a more compact, crystalline form, better known as resistant starch. This type of starch behaves differently in the body. It resists digestion in the small intestine and instead travels to the large intestine to act as a prebiotic fiber. The fascinating part is how significantly this transformation affects glycemic impact. Studies consistently show that cooling cooked potatoes can reduce their glycemic response, with reductions commonly landing in the 25 to 35% range, depending on variety and cooking style. How long should we cool them? The sweet spot is at least 6 to 8 hours in the refrigerator. Overnight is even better. Shorter cooling times help, but the deeper changes in starch structure need time. Do I have to eat them cold? Not at all, and this is the part that surprises most people. Once resistant starch forms, it stays stable even if we gently reheat the potatoes. So if cold potato salad or chilled dishes aren't your thing, you can warm them back up and still get the benefit. The one rule: avoid high heat frying or crisping, which can partially reverse the resistant starch formation. A light reheat, steaming, microwaving, or sautéing gently keeps the structure intact. Step 3. Serve smart. Once the potatoes have been fully cooled, the next question is how to bring them back onto the plate without losing the lower glycemic impact. Here's where pairing and gentle reheating quietly shape the result. A cooled potato on its own will behave more steadily, but what we combine it with can make that steadiness even stronger. When we pair the potato with protein or healthy fats, salmon, eggs, olive oil, yogurt dressings, the stomach empties more slowly, which spreads out the release of glucose. Suddenly, the potato becomes part of a balanced team instead of a lone fast-acting starch. Acidity gives us another soft advantage. Lemon, vinegar, or a simple vinaigrette help keep post-meal glucose responses smoother while also adding brightness to the dish. And if you prefer warm potatoes, light reheating won't undo the resistant starch. A gentle warm-up keeps comfort intact while preserving the benefit you created during cooling. Step 4. Mini enhancers. To make this method something we can actually use day to day, a few small adjustments can amplify the effect without complicating the meal. One of the simplest tweaks is size. Larger pieces of potato digest more slowly, so leaving them in chunks instead of mashing or finely cutting naturally supports a steadier rise in blood sugar. Another small helper is the timing of acidity. Adding lemon or vinegar after the cooling phase preserves its digestive effect, giving your meal a subtle but meaningful assist when it finally reaches the gut. And for practicality, batch cooking becomes a quiet game changer. Because cooling is essential for building resistant starch, preparing several potatoes at once means you've already done the work ahead of time. Throughout the week, you can choose whether to eat them chilled, gently reheated, or turned into salads and sides, all without starting from scratch. These small enhancers simply make the core method smoother, easier, and more flexible. Alternative low-impact options if you still want to avoid potatoes. Sweet potatoes. If you enjoy the comfort of starchy foods but want something naturally gentler on blood sugar, sweet potatoes can be a great option. They digest more slowly because of their fiber and antioxidants, which means fewer sharp spikes and more sustained energy. Whether baked or steamed, they're satisfying without the same post-meal crash that some people get from regular potatoes. Lentils. Lentils are one of the most reliable slow carbs available. Their combination of resistant starch, fiber, and plant-based protein helps steady glucose responses while keeping you full for hours. They pair well with almost any meal,
soups, warm salads, or even as a side to replace mashed potatoes. Many people are surprised by how stable they feel after a lentil-based dish. Butternut squash. Butternut squash offers that familiar soft, creamy texture, but is much gentler on blood sugar. It's rich in carotenoids and has a naturally lower glycemic impact. Roasted cubes, blended soups, or mash-style servings can deliver the warmth and comfort of potatoes without the same glucose roller coaster. At the end of the day, managing blood sugar doesn't have to mean cutting out every food you enjoy. Sometimes the difference isn't the food itself, but the way we prepare it, pair it, and understand how our bodies respond. If you'd like us to explore other everyday foods that can be upgraded this easily, let us know in the comments. And feel free to check out the next video when you're ready.